Hello there and welcome to our first Thrawn's Revenge Imperial Civil War news post in a while. So today we're going to be looking at the first of our Vision of the Future series of updates. In this series of updates, we're going to be looking beyond what's immediately planned for the upcoming 2.3 release and talk about some of the broader goals for different elements of the mod. To start us off, we're going to be taking a look at two related areas of the mod which offer some interesting possibilities but remain underexplored currently. Those are the Unknown Regions and the Empire of the Hand. So like usual, this news post will be available both as this video and also in a text form. If you would prefer to read the text form, then you can check the description. There will be a link to the forum topic for the update. So while the broader focus of Imperial Civil War is the collapse of the Empire into its various successor states, including the New Republic, as they attempted to reunite or establish themselves as the main galactic power, part of what we attempt to do with our mods is represent the broader galactic situation and allow people to explore that as much as possible with as many different groups as possible. Essentially, we try to approach this with basically the Total War or Europa Universalis, Crusader Kings, Hearts of Iron style, as the engine will allow us. Although it doesn't receive as much attention in the various works that make up the expanded universe, and in-universe isn't explored as much either, the Unknown Regions still make up a significant portion of that galaxy. Within the mod, we currently only cover that via the Empire of the Hand, which, while being an interesting group in many ways, doesn't represent the entirety of what was going on in the region during the period. In fact, they spent most of their time busy dealing with the various threats that lie within the Unknown Regions, while in the mod their only option is to immediately invade the known galaxy. This is an area which we've always wanted to expand on, and it's something that we're going to look to do in future releases. The Emperor of the Hand as a faction, while some aspects are interesting or unique, also has a lot of rough edges, to put it nicely, and need a lot of work to bring them up to par, which we'll talk about first. As a faction, the Empire of the Hand offers some unique and interesting units, but there are also many places where they currently fall flat. For one thing, since they have some of the oldest models, a lot of their units need and will be getting some level of visual upgrade to bring them into line with newer assets. Since the hardest part of making their units tends to be coming up with a suitable design, more so than the actual modeling and texturing, instead of having a specific release dedicated to updating them like we've been doing with other factions, like the addition of the Corporate Sector Authority or the Hapens, which doesn't have as much baggage and has a bit more of a framework for us to work off of from what's known from Legends. Their updates will happen across a few different releases instead. In 2.3, we'll also finally be releasing their Intigo battlecruiser, which at 2200 meters is the largest ship of their fleet. We were originally hoping to put it in 2.2, and it can be used in current versions of Ascendancy, our Sims of Solar Empire mod, where you can see some of the content already. But we felt like this still needed a lot of work. The current version before the updates can also be seen. I'll add a picture into this video. It's also in the text version of the update. The general shape will be remaining, but a lot of the details have changed since those pictures were posted. That is quite old. I think it's almost a year and a half or 2 years old at this point. Final pictures should hopefully be coming soon, hopefully featuring in some of the upcoming preview playthroughs. But on ground, every unit will be redesigned for them, and most importantly, rebalanced. Ground as a whole is being rebalanced and reworked in the mod in 2.3 and then in 2.4 as well. However, in 2.2 there are a few changes, there are a few units in the Empire of the Hand, like the Mega Major Tank, which remain obscenely overpowered. In 2.3 we're rebalancing every part of ground combat, so that will all be changing. But they also need ARTA updates. Unlike with their space roster, the ground roster redesign is one we hope to do all at once. That's currently planned for 2.4, but specifics may change. Overall, the roles for the units will remain the same, but we'll be bringing them away from the Lego tank aesthetic they currently tend to have, and trying to make them look a bit more in line with some of the other factions. And while there are plenty of other story or research mechanics we'd like to add to flesh out the Empire of the Hand more, something else we'll be working on with their units and with their unit updates is nailing down exactly where their units are coming from, which will be more important as we flesh out the Unknown Regions as a whole. So the Empire of the Hand comes from a few different backgrounds. They're a mix of Imperial and Chiss and local groups, and different combinations of those for their personnel and for their hardware. Their units in their buildable roster aren't directly Imperial in origin. Those tended to be funneled from the Empire, and that would have most likely stopped after Endor. So aside from some starting units for them, we'll be trying to group the rest of their roster into other categories. Some will be labeled as designs coming directly from the Chiss Ascendancy, as many of their assets and personnel were directly funneled to the Hand from them. Some assets will be designs that we say are made by the Hand itself or one of the various member species, and some, such as the fusions of Imperial tech with one another or with another of those groups, tends to be a bit more straightforward. That would be stuff like the Clawcraft, which is a mix of TIE Fighter and other groups, and the Chit Star Destroyer. So in the mod, that'd be like the Chaff Star Destroyer, the Ascendancy Star Destroyer, the Peltas design, that kind of thing. And while the Empire of the Hand currently starts off controlling everything in the Unknown Regions in the mod, they were in fact trying to combat various threats of different sizes the entire time. It's impossible for us to represent every little group they would have come across due to the lack of information in universe and a limitation to what we can put in game. We are only limited to 16 faction slots, and we have memory considerations to take into account. But we do intend to try to put some of the more major players in the region at least. Ideally, given enough time and resources, we'd like to have entire galactic conquest scenarios based within the Unknown Regions. Because these updates are about covering future content, here's a quick look at some of the major groups we'd like to represent, focusing on those which had bigger impacts or the most opportunity for fleshing out. Keep in mind, all this is only perspective, and not necessarily set in stone, and certainly not something that's necessarily being worked on immediately either. Though we do have some idea of the different phases in which they could be implemented, the ability to do factions and species listed will generally depend on the resources as we complete other stuff, and keep in mind also that being represented here doesn't necessarily mean they'll be their own faction directly. Some would be, but some would also be represented through the Independent Forces faction. We only have 16 technically slots for factions that we can use safely within the mod before things start becoming unstable. So we have to group them within that. We have to prioritize the 16 most important faction slots, which we already technically use, and which is why we're combining some stuff, and then figure out from there which stuff is still worth having, which would get slotted into the Independent Forces faction. That's similar to how the more minor warlords are currently set up in 2.2. For example, the Antimeridius sector, Elrude sector, Preniok at Morja, that kind of thing, and Harsk. Some may be in the running to be playable factions in the right circumstances eventually, but that would be a bit farther down the line. We still have, I think, 2 or more other factions that we'd probably be getting to before any of these. So the first of these factions, as you can probably guess, will be the Chit Ascendancy. That's the official government of the Chit based on Scylla, and arguably the most influential group in the Unknown Regions. They'll be present in some way. The second group we'd like to represent are the Killick Colony, which are an insectoid hive-minded species which originated on Alderaan and migrated long ago into the Unknown Regions. You may be familiar with them from the Dark Nest Crisis books, which took place after the Yuuzhan Vong War, but certain other situations in the group themselves were present before that war took place. The third group, which we've seen a little bit of in this video, or at least a picture of, is the Sea Ruby Imperium, which is a faction of warmongering religious fanatic reptiles. We have several of their assets done already. They most likely start off as a space-only faction that you can take the planets of, but we would like to get at least their infantry done before adding them. Otherwise, they'll just be on Luak or something and expanded from there. Then you have the Vagary Empire, which are actually a bunch of slaving nomads. They might be worked in as a raid fleet option in specific areas, because as a nomadic group, it's kind of hard to put them on a planet. That's what a nomad wouldn't be doing. And then finally we have Nuso Esfa, who's a warlord whose forces became one of the first targets of Thrawn's campaigns into the Unknown Regions. This is sort of on the edge of the known galaxy, and it basically connected parts of Thrawn's Unknown Region conquest to stuff that was happening in the known galaxy at the time. Again, this isn't quite coming in 2.3. This is all just a rough outline of some of the ideas we have for fleshing out parts of the mod, which currently aren't especially fleshed out. All of it ultimately depends on resources. Some, like the Chit and Ssi-Ruuvi, we have a considerable amount of work done on already, like I was saying, so they're more likely to show up in some form sooner than later. But that's going to do it for our first Division of the Future news post. Again, all this will be expanded a bit more as we get closer to the specifics, so each of those factions would receive their own faction profile. Any of the additional changes will receive a bit more attention as it's done. So we hope you're looking forward to that. As usual, I'm also running preview playthroughs regularly on the YouTube channel here, so if you want to see some of the changes in action as they happen, you can subscribe and you can go and check out. Currently, we're finishing off the Greater Maldruud playthrough, and then on December 7th, I think we're going to be starting the Corporate Sector Authority playthrough. So a lot of the changes are going to be visible coming up soon. So thanks for watching. Hope you're looking forward to the changes, and I will see you next time. Bye.